Okay, here we are, Chanukah, Parshas Miketz and Chanukah. Now, this worked very well last week, so we're going to do it again. Whoever is not yet on the email list, this is the email, tanyahammer@gmail. You will get all the notes every week, the handouts. You will get updates whether there is or isn't a shiur, and you could check your emails from Tanya Hammer.
Also gives personal updates.
And personal updates of her life in Israel. I know, it's wonderful. Okay, here we go. I have to say, today's shiur is a gift from, you know who I'm talking about, we call him the secret weapon. The wonderful son of my mother-in-law, right here, Mrs. Ween, and the brother of my sister-in-law, Nechama, from Chicago. Oh. Welcome. Okay, here we go. Our shiur is called today, Adam and His Unicorn. Yes, yes, believe it or not. So many things that we think are just, we figure they're just, they're out there somewhere and they're they're mythological or they're fantasy. So much has an origin in truth, in real deep ideas, okay? So here we go. What we're going to do today, our subject is the following. What is Chanukah? How do we think about Chanukah? It's much more than just the story of the revolution of the Jewish people against the Syrian Greeks. And we'll talk about that a little bit, okay? It is much more than that one-time miracle of the Hachashemen and the oil burning for 8 days. Chanukah goes back to the very, very, very earliest origins of our existence. It goes back to Adam. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to trace Chanukah back all the way, okay? And then we're going to trace it forward, and we're going to see that Chanukah, this holiday, found its way into cultures way beyond the Jewish culture, okay? And we're going to be able to identify those trends or those aspects of other nations, cultures, holidays that clearly come right from us, okay? So here's the Mishnah of Avodah Zarah, and it starts out telling you what some of the various holidays of the nations of the world were, okay? So the Mishnah, which don't forget, the Mishnah was written in the year 200 of the Common Era, so it's already past the Greek Empire, into the Roman Empire. So this is what it says. These are the festivities of the idolaters. There's one called Calenda, and there's one called Saturnalia, okay? We're not going to do the third one. Gemara says, Rav Chanan ben Rabba says, Calenda is kept on the 8 days following the winter equinox, the winter solstice. In other words, that day, that the day is the shortest and the night is the longest, where there's the least light. Okay, from there for 8 days following it, that is Calenda. And Saturnalia is on the 8 days preceding it. So in other words, Saturnalia is the holiday from the Romans that commemorated the darkening, the last 8 days of the darkening period of the world. And Calenda represented the first 8 days of the brightening, the lengthening period of light in the world. Good? Okay. Our rabbis taught. Where does this come from? Okay. When early Adam saw the day getting gradually shorter, he said, "Woe is to me! Perhaps because I've sinned, the world around me is becoming darkened and returning to its state of tohu vavohu. This then is the kind of death to which I've been sentenced from heaven." So he began keeping an 8-day fast. So the 8 days. So now we're talking about like this: Hashem created the world on the 25th of Elul. Remember that day. From Elul, the 25th of Elul, so basically the 25th of Kislev, those 3 months, the light got less and less and less and less. So Chanukah is the winter solstice, essentially. It's when the least amount of light is, appears during the day. He says, this must be the slow death that I'm destined to endure. It must be, eventually there'll be no light left at all. But then when he saw... He observed the winter equinox and noted the day getting increasingly longer. He said, "Oh, this is the world's course. It's minhag ha'olam. This is obviously built into the system." And he set forth to keep 8 days of festivity. In the following year, he appointed both as festivals, 8 days prior to the solstice, 8 days after the solstice. Now he fixed them for the sake of heaven, but the heathens appointed them for the sake of idolatry. So notice we're talking about 16 days here. We just read that there are 2 holidays. One's called Calenda, one's called Saturnalia, also 8 and 8. Saturnalia is the diminishing of the light. Calenda is the increasing of the light. This is quite right according to the one who holds that the world was created in Tishrei, so that he saw the short days before seeing the long days. But according to the opinion that the world was created in Nisan, what do you do with this? So they have another version. Basically, after he sinned, it got darker and darker and darker. Okay, and he figured, oh, the world's just going to darken to a point of oblivion. And then the sun rose and it got lighter and lighter and lighter. So it really happened in the course of a day. But when he realized that it's minhag ha'olam for it to get dark for 8 hours instead of 8 days, okay, 8 hours and then get light again. So he went and realized that he's created a festival. Now, look at this. So here's what it says. The rabbis taught, when Adam on the day of his creation saw the setting of the sun, he said, alas, it is because I've sinned that the world around me is becoming dark. The universe will now become again void and without form. This then is the death to which I've been sentenced. So he sat up all night fasting and weeping, and Eve was weeping opposite him. When, however, dawn broke, he said, this is the usual course of the world. He then arose and offered a bullock, a shar, whose horns were developed before its hoofs. This is all, of course, meaningful stuff, which we're not going to get into right now. Quotes a pasuk here. I didn't bring you the Hebrew. Now, Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, the shar which Adam offered had only one horn in its forehead. Okay, and he quotes a pasuk here. So right away, back in the beginning, the Gemara is telling you that there's something called a shar, and it only had one horn. And when there's a quote a pasuk about its horns, and they asked, but doesn't horn mean 2 horns? And Rav Nachman ben Yitzchak says horn is spelled defectively. It's missing one of the letters. It means 1 horn. Okay, so right away we have here that there was an offering of a 1-horned shar, bull, in honor of the fact that this is minhag ha'olam. This is how the world naturally goes. It gets dark before it gets light. Okay?
Shabbos morning, that was technically Shabbos morning.
When it starts getting light. Well, there's a whole discussion there with 36 hours and what the hours were. We're not even going to go there. But, okay, you can look that up. The 36 hours of Adam. That's another interest. Anyway, here let's look at let's look at Wikipedia. Okay, Saturnalia was an ancient Roman festival in honor of the god Saturn. Now start seeing the patterns here. Held on the 17th of December of the Julian calendar, and later expanded with festivities through the 23rd of December. Basically, they expanded it here to. Eventually, they added 7 days to it until it became it went through phases, but it became an 8-day holiday, starting on the 17th. The holiday was celebrated with a sacrifice at the Temple of Saturn in the Roman Forum, and a public banquet followed by gift giving. Okay? Continual partying and a carnival atmosphere. Now, this carnival atmosphere overturned Roman social norms. Gambling was permitted, and masters provided table service for their slaves. It was topsy-turvy day, so let's see what that is. In Roman mythology, Saturn was an agricultural deity who was said to have reigned over the world in a golden age. Remember, this is the 8 darkening days, okay? When humans enjoyed the spontaneous bounty of the earth, without labor, in a state of innocence. What does that sound like? Yeah, but we're losing it. Gan Eden, right? We're losing it. The revelries of Saturnalia were supposed to reflect the conditions of the lost mythical age. Not all of them desirable, okay? The Greek equivalent was chronia. That's a separate thing. The ancient Roman historian, Justinius, credits Saturn with being some historical king in pre-Roman Italy. So, first of all, you have themes here already. All right? You have that there was a better time, a mythical, a perfect time, and we've lost our ability to exist in that state, so we're mourning that, and we're turning it into we're trying to recreate a state of innocence when there was no masters and no slaves, and everybody was equal, and everybody had the same amount, and nobody depended on anyone else for their existence. Everybody was provided for, okay? So look at the private festivities, okay? If you look at it, they would basically, like I said, topsy-turvy day. They first of all, here, look down a few lines down. They honor the slaves with a dinner prepared as if for the master, and only afterwards is a table set again for the head of the household. Okay, so basically this was the slaves operated as if they were masters and vice versa. All right, look at the next paragraph. Saturnalia is the best known of the several festivals in the Greco-Roman world, characterized by role reversals and behavioral license. Slaves were treated to a banquet of the kind usually enjoyed by their masters. Alrighty? And the master served them food. Now look at this. Gambling and dice playing. Normally prohibited, or at least frowned upon, were permitted for all, even slaves. Coins and nuts were the stakes. What does this remind you of? I remember when we were kids, we played dreidel for coins and nuts. This is, now, why do we do that? Are we just copying Saturnalia? What is going on here?
Saturnalia's copying us.
The Jewish people in the time of the Gezeres Hashmashot, when the Greeks did not allow them to learn Torah, they would learn Torah in secret. And when the Greeks came to see what was going on, they were playing dice with coins and nuts as if they were celebrating Saturnalia. Okay, now gift giving. Okay, this is not anywhere mentioned in the Mishnah or Gemara about Hanukkah anywhere. This is strictly Roman. This is from Saturnalia. They give gifts to the children. Okay. Here, read the gambling and dice playing, because gifts of value would mark social status. Contrary to the spirit of the season, they're often pottery. Okay, children were giving gifts. Okay. Look at the bottom. Children receive toys as gifts. That is not Jewish. The only thing that's Jewish is giving Hanukkah guilt on the 5th day of Hanukkah. Anybody know why? Why the 5th day? Everything is always a lesson. Everything's always a limud. Because the 5th day of Hanukkah, the 5th night of Hanukkah can never fall on Shabbos. On Friday night. So you give money, dafka, to show that this never falls on Friday night Shabbos. Okay. All right, now watch this. As an observance of state religion, Saturnalia was supposed to have been held 16 days before Kalends of January. You see that? Okay, now the date, the 17th of December, was the first day of Capricorn, the house of Saturn, the planet named for the god in proximity to the winter. So that was the 7th. That's the constellation that rises, and then there's 8 days till the solstice. Okay, so far so good. We see what happened in Roman Greece this is going all the way back to Adam. All right, now we're going to figure out why Hanukkah, with the opposition against the Jewish people practicing their religion and their battle against the Greeks and the rededicating the Beis Hamikdash and the lighting the menorah, how this all happens also at the same exact time. It was destined to happen. Oh shoot! It was destined to happen. It was destined to happen at that time. Okay? Now, here we go. Shabbos, the 16 days. All right? Okay. The sages taught in a brisa. This is from Shabbos 21b. Okay? The sages taught in a brisa. The basic mitzvah of Chanukah is each day to have a light kindled by a person, the head of the household, for himself and his household. And the Mahadrin, those who are meticulous in the performance of the mitzvah, kindle a light for each and every one in the household. And the Mahadrim and Mahadrin are even more meticulous, adjust the number of lights daily. So it's not one light for every single person. Each one gets their own menorah, and everyone lights one light. Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagree as to the nature of that adjustment. Beit Shammai says, on the first day one kindles 8 lights, and from then on gradually decreases the number of lights, until on the last day of Hanukkah he kindles only 1 light. Beit Hillel says, on the first day one kindles 1 light, and from there on gradually increases the number of lights, until on the last day kindles 8 lights. What is this reminding you of? Which one are we taking? Which one is the message? The diminishing lights, the world that was lost, that perfect world that was lost, or the increasing lights, the perfect world that we slowly are recreating? Okay. So now, of course, if you read yourself, the rest of Gemara, yes, we know this is the story of Chanukah. All right, now, they searched, the whole story here. The Hashmashot monarchy overcame the Greeks, emerged victorious. They searched and found only 1 cruse of oil with the high priest's seal, undisturbed. There was sufficient oil for 1 day. A miracle occurred, and it lit for 8 days, okay? let's now, so we're having this 8-day theme. The miracle of Chanukah was 8 days. There was only supposed to be 1 day, and it went on for 8 days. Again, 8 is the number. 8 down, 8 up. This is, okay, look at Rambam Laws of Chanukah, okay? You know, Tanya did it this way. She cheated. Really, Rambam writes this out in a paragraph. Only if you're looking carefully, and Heshi saw this, do you notice what's really going on here, okay? So, Rambam writes in a paragraph, okay? If you just read it as a paragraph, everything flows. It says like this: Babayas Sheni, in the Second Temple, the emperors of Yavan, they decreed upon the Jewish people many different decrees. Okay, so this is how Rambam writes it. He says they decreed to so they decreed many decrees. Bitlu datam, v'lo hinicho osam lasak b'torah mitzvahs. They didn't let them observe Torah mitzvahs. They extended their hand against their property and their daughter. They entered the sanctuary. They wrought havoc within, partzot, there are all kinds of violations. V'timo ataros, they made the sacramental things impure. V'tzar lahem l'Yisrael ma'od mepim, they made it very miserable for them. V'lachtom lachatz gadol. Okay, so forget these numbers. They're confusing you. They're not in. They shouldn't be there. And they made them, and they oppressed them greatly. There's 8 descriptions of how they caused the Jewish people to suffer. Okay, then it says ad sharichem aleim avoseinu ad sharichem aleim elokim. No, she missed some words here, so I'll read it to you properly. Okay, here it says. Okay, until the God of our fathers had compassion upon them. Now we count again. Vahoshia miyadam, save them from their hands. Vahatzilam, rescue them. V'gavru b'nei Hashmashot hakonim hagdolim, and the Hashmonaim became more powerful. V'hargum, and they killed them. V'hoshiu Yisrael miyadam, and they saved the Jewish people from their hands. V'hemidu melech min hakohanim, they made a king from the Kohanim. V'chazru malchus l'Yisrael yeser al masayim shana, and malchus, sovereignty returned to Yisrael more than 200 years. There's 8 listings, 8 descriptions of the victory, of restoring our power. So even Rambam, okay, when he writes the halachas of Chanukah and what happened, he breaks it down into 8 levels of darkness and 8 degrees of light. Do you see that? Now, so 8 is the theme here. Okay. Now turn the page. Al Hanisim. What do you see? B'mei Matisyo ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol Hashmashot banav k'she'amda malchus Yavan Roshal Amcha Yisrael lashkicham torsecha lahavira mechukei ritzanecha ata barachamecha rabim amadat alehem be'eser asam. Okay, they tried to destroy us. You stood for us. What did Hashem do? We know this. You all know this in Hebrew. Rabtes rivam, dantas dinam, nekamtes nekmasam, masarti giborim biad chalashim, rabim biad ma'atim, tameim biad tahorim, roshaim biad tzadikim. You see that? 8. There are 8 ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu protected us and delivered them into our hands. Is this pretty obvious? What's going on? We have an 8 theme here. Yes.
If the Pas Gemini was supposed to be for 1 day, so the miracle was 7 days.
Okay, that's a really good question with about 900 answers. Okay. The first day, there's many answers. We actually had a share on this a couple of years ago. 1 day for the Rabim Be'ad Ma'atim, 1 day. There's all kinds of approaches, but it's a very famous question. In fact, there's a whole sefer that just has that question and all the answers.
I'm sorry, I
Now, basically, what do we know till now? We know that there is there's always going to be, in the stages of the increasing darkness, this theme of 8, and there's always going to be in the stages of increasing light, this theme of 8. Okay, that's clear. This is original from Adam. This appears also in the machlokas of the halachas of Chanukah. This appears in the description, as we said, our prayer in Al Hanisim. This appears in Rome and in Greece in their holidays. Okay, this is a universal understanding that there's a natural, like Adam said, minhag olam, of darkness leading to light. Okay, Now, why is that? What is that? How does that operate in history? What do we do with that? It has to be, clearly, it's built into the system, okay? Before we go into this, we're going to learn Bereshis Rabbah 2:4, okay? Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Pasach Karya Bagolius. He was explaining the second pasuk in the Torah. V'haaretz haisa tohu uvohu v'choshech al panei tahom. And he said, this pasuk is an allusion. It's hinting to four types of four exiles that we endured. Each one is represented by one of these words. Tohu represents Bavel. Okay, Bohu represents Galas Parasamadai. Okay, Choshech is Galas Yavan, and Tahom is going to be Rome. Now, regarding Choshech being Greece, Shehachashicha Einehem Shal Yisrael B'Gzerosehem. They made the eyes of the Jewish people dark with their decrees. That they used to say to them, okay, here it comes, Kisfu al Keren Hashar, right on the horn of the bull, the one horn. Okay, Ein lachem chelek be'elokei Yisrael. We have no portion with the God of Israel. First of all, what is this writing on the horn of a bull? One horn. What is this reminiscent of? The bull that Adam sacrificed. Why you had to write it on the on the horn of a bull? Many suggestions. Some say that it's how they used to use, like that was a baby's bottle. They would carve out a bullhorn, and so in like the earliest stages of your, of your development, you're already getting the message, we don't belong to the Jewish people. But what we're going to focus on now is what does the Hechashichu Einehem, they made their eyes dark. We've talked about this, hopefully some of this will be familiar, and new ideas will also, you'll be able to expand this to other new, in new directions. The Greeks, do we or do we not think the Greeks were a source of light? Were they a source of light or a source of darkness in the world? Who were the Greeks? Well, let's hear. How do you know they're a source of light? From the Torah, from us, from our own Jewish Masorah. What do we have to say that's positive about the Greeks and that their contribution was positive? First of all, Hashem has granted great beauty. Okay, to Yefes, as long as it's associated with shame. So there's a place for the beauty of Greece. What else? Is there a halacha that you know of that clearly, allowed
to write the Sefer Torah in Greek.
What does that mean? You're allowed to write a Sefer Torah in Greek. We always say that. What does that mean? You literally can write a Sefer Torah in Greek. You open it and it's Greek, and it's a kosher Sefer Torah. Now, we're not talking about modern Greek language. There was a more ancient original Greek language, and this was considered, it had the capacity somehow to express the Torah correctly. Okay? So why do we hate the Greeks?
Because their focus was wrong.
And what did they do to us? Why were they so against us? Why did they try to shut down our religion? Why did they darken how did they darken our eyes? What happened? Why are the Greeks the big enemy?
Well, they believe in many gods. They couldn't get it together.
They didn't believe in Bereshis, which was the beginning of time. They had a circular.
But you could write the Torah in Greek. Why are they the ultimate enemy?
Socially, they were sneaky in how they wanted us to get their customs.
No, I think they're pretty straightforward.
like a friendly persuasion.
But why did they want us? Why were we the enemy? Okay, so we did this before. In order to understand why we don't like the Greeks, we have to know the timeline. We have to know chronology. Okay, the Greeks that we like, okay, ended with Aristotle, who was about 350 BCE. The Greeks of the Chanukah story are 150 BCE. Antiochus Epiphanes IV dies in 164 BCE. So about, let's say 164 to 164, 165. They're completely different Greeks. And in fact, historically, they're not even called the same name. The classic Greeks, meaning Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. Aristotle is the tutor of Alexander the Great, who is the one who first brings Hellenism into Israel, and it's not till 4 empires later do you come to Antiochus and the Chanukah story. Okay, hundreds of years pass. The ancient classic Greeks, okay, is called the Hellenic period. We are not, the Chanukah story doesn't happen in the Hellenic period. In that classic period, you have a whole different Greek empire. We learned about the Greeks, some of us have, or some of us remember something. First of all, they were not empire builders. They had their little city-states, and they wanted to govern perfectly in their city-states, and they did not have big ideas about conquest, and they were definitely philosophers. And we're talking about, when we talk about the Hellenic period, it's actually from Homer, which is about 700 BC, okay, which is really like right before the Churban Bayis Rishon, all the way to like Aristotle. Okay. Then with Alexander the Great, everything changes because he starts having these huge ideas about empire building and conquering huge territories and exporting the Greek culture to all kinds of other places. And there, of course, in the interaction between the Greeks and the Persians, the Greeks and the Egyptians, the Greeks and the Syrians, all kinds of other influences are going to make their way in. By the time you get to the Chanukah story, you are in the Hellenistic period, okay? And you're dealing with the Syrian Greeks. Now, a residue, why are they called Syrian Greeks? Because because Alexander conquered a wide swath of land. I've had my smartboard here. We could show you a slide, but maybe one day. So you could see this huge empire, okay? It went from Greece to eastwards, okay? All the Greek Isles, of course, and then down all towards the east, which means it included Egypt. It went all the way beyond that, included Persia. But all of these were originally different cultures. Now, what you have is, after Alexander the Great dies, essentially his empire is divided up into two different warring empires. They used to compete with each other and constantly fought back and forth for more or less of the empire. Happened to be that Israel was right in between both of them. One was Syria, the Syrian Greeks in the north and the east. One was Egypt in the south, towards more to the west, and Africa. And Israel was right between Egypt and Syria. And so it was always going back and forth. So Egypt was either under Syrian control or under Egyptian control, under Syrian control, under Egyptian, because it went back and forth and back and forth. The kings of Egypt were called the Talmai, spelled with a PT. The kings of Assyria were the Antiochuses. All right? Now, it was in this period where the city in Egypt, the Greek Egyptian city Alexandria, rose to such great prominence. And that's when that whole story of the Septuagint happened, when they called in Jewish Talmidei Chacham and made them write the Torah, translate Torah into Greek. Remember that whole thing? Now, by the time you get to Antiochus IV, there's Antiochus Epiphanes. He has conquered Israel. And now he is on a mission to wipe out Judaism. So what of the original classic Greek ideas have filtered through in some distorted fashion to now define Hellenism? This is what we really have to ask. Okay? And so far, so good? Does this make sense? Yeah, wait, let's do this first, and then take Leia's question. So, we have to understand what is going on in the world. The Greeks did not arise out of nowhere. Okay? There was a huge shift taking place in the world that was predetermined from the time of Adam. The shift that we're talking about here is what we call we call it bein Hashmashot, between the suns. There is a mitzvah. Not everybody does this way, but we are taught that we are supposed to light the Chanukah candles, bein Hashmashot. We did talk about this 2 years ago. This particular idea of bein Hashmashot is I don't know if it's a chiddush or but I learned it from Rav Uriel Eitam, who's the Rosh Yeshiva of the Hesder Yeshiva in Yerucham, wrote a little kuntras on Chanukah, and this idea is in it. There is a mitzvah to light bein Hashmashot. When is bein Hashmashot? Between when? Shkia and Tzeis HaKochavim. Between the sunset and the time the stars come out. In America, it's about what, like 40, 50 minutes. In Israel, it's much faster. Now, what happens at this time? First of all, why is it called bein Hashmashot, between the suns? So the simple answer is, well, one sun is setting. It's set. It's already after Shkia, the sunset. The world is still a little light. What is the source of the light in the world after the sun is set?
Still the sun.
Still the sun. But you can't see the sun, but the light is the residue of the sun. But then it's going to get dark, and it's going to be quite a while till the sun rises again. So you could say it's bein Hashmashot, but it's not like one sun sets and one sun rises. One sun is setting, and with time, the next sun will rise. But that's not precise. It seems like it's between the suns, correct? So this is happening. This is the reason we light is because it represents the entire shift that is taking place in the world, and the battle, the dispute between the Jewish people and the Greeks of what to do with this shift. It is not a coincidence that it is precisely at the time of Alexander the Great, who is at the time of Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik is in the Second Temple era. He is the last person to have some degree of nevuah. He's the last of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, correct? Some residue. After Shimon HaTzadik, that's it. That's Alexander. That's the shift. That's when the Greece that becomes Hellenistic Greece starts to really take over the world. Now, at the time we lose nevuah, we also lose miracles, nisim. And the world starts to drift away and devalue avodah zarah. The Greek avodah zarah of the Hellenistic period is a sham. It's not real. Okay, it's and all the temples that the Romans made and all that, their gods were not really the gods of the way they used to view gods. They were flawed, fallible, semi-human who had the same vices that we had: women, wine, war, and all kind. You could trick them and all that kind of stuff. We're not going to get into that, but they're not enamored anymore. Aristotle, this is the shift. He's not enamored with the gods. He's like Avraham, but 1,800 years later, sitting with a notebook and charting the course of the celestial powers and saying, the sun does this, and the moon does that. And he's cataloging. He's a scientist. He's got no awe for them as gods, and he's not worried they're going to strike him down with lightning because he's observing them. It's a new world. What is happening here? Why is it exactly at this point, if you look in Pirkei Avos, that we shift from Torah Shebechsav, which is Nevuah, to Torah Shebal Peh? There is a change going on across the board. It is not that anybody invented it or humanity became so smart and realized that this was built in from Adam. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world, we see already in the pattern, it was the 25th of Elul that Hashem says Yehi Or. 3 months later, is the 25th of Kislev, where that Or reappears, but it's going to reappear. Not only is the light going to get brighter in the world, it's going to reappear as Hanukkah. Okay, this theme that the Ar Hagana stays hidden for 3 months, we've mentioned this. You find it in many different examples, right? Just a side point. This is a separate share. It's online, but to remind you, Moshe was born hidden for 3 months. He was born, remember there was light, it was hidden for 3 months, so she couldn't hide him anymore. When Tamar was pregnant with the ancestors of Mashiach, she was pregnant for 3 months, she couldn't hide it anymore. Moshe was born on Zayin Adar. 3 months later is the Torah being given, the Ar. Okay? Now, the idea is that it is built into the system that Hashem's Ar is going to enlighten the world, and then it's going to diminish. The time period of the Ar of Hashem lighting up the world, Nisim and Nevuah and Eretz Yisrael and the Beis HaMikdash and the Ur Mitumim and the Aron and all of that. We've talked about this. Remember another share. It's called Leah. Remember that? Mm-hmm. But we're not going there now. This time period is 1,000 years. Okay, it's basically from Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's really from the Avos to the Chorban Bayis Rishon, but it's from essentially the Yetzias Mitzrayim as a nation to Chorban Bayis Rishon, and then a little beyond till Shimon HaTzadik. You have a little bit residue. You have the time period of Hashem's sun clearly lighting up the world. Hashem is interfering and very present and very active in our life. We are not the only ones to interact and to see this world as a natural continuation of and in sync with the spiritual world. In other nations, they also saw God everywhere. The tree was a god, and the stone was a god, and the river was a god, and the wind was a god. Everywhere, everything was an expression of God. This was the nature of the world. The difference between us and the Ovdei Kochavim, those that worship these forces, is we understood that the physical world is in sync with God, and everything happening here is is in line with and an expression of Hashem's will. And they said there are gods whose only domain essentially is the physical world, and we relate directly to them to get what we need in the physical world. And their interest or the bigger goal there is in opposition to us. We have this. We are in the same. We are all pulling in the same direction. They divided it up. There's gods with their will, us with our will, and we need them to provide for us, but we have no interest in what their will is, and they don't really have much interest in what our will is, so we'll make a deal with them. We'll keep them happy for what they want. They'll give us what we want, and we can live our separate lives. Okay? But they did see the interaction between this world and the next world. We also did, but it wasn't to live separate lives. It was to be in sync with, an expression of. Now, everybody knows, we've talked about this in a million different ways. This was the chinuch period of Jewish history. This is when we were taught, we were given examples, went through a long process where it became integrated in us that this physical world that we're in, and history, and human nature, and science, all of it is and must be in sync with the eternal truths, okay? We knew that, we learned it, but it wasn't something we personally discovered, it was something taught to us. And any time, and think of a child in their parents' home, in the chinuch years, anything that's imposed upon you, taught to you, forced upon you, showed to you, demonstrated, it doesn't come from you, it comes from the outside, and therefore it doesn't necessarily fully penetrate. And we devalue it, and we turn our back on it, and we reject it, and it's natural, and it's normal. And this phase has to come to an end. It has to come first, because it's the chinuch phase, but it has to come to an end. Because the real goal of what a parent really wants for a child, and what Hashem really wants for us, is the next phase, where we take these ideas which were taught to us, and then we go into the long stage of history, which is essentially where God backs off, like a good parent, hides, takes away Nevuah, takes away the miracles, takes away Eretz Yisrael, takes away the Beis HaMikdash, takes away the Aron, takes away everything slowly, gradually, and says, okay, now, all these ideas I've taught you, they're in the 24 Sifrei Tanakh, right? Now take them and start to go through history and let these ideas guide you, and you should stand for these ideas, and you should represent these ideas, and you should be the source of the light that will now come to shine on the world. In other words, Hashem's light is setting, but where? We've talked about this. Where is it setting into?
Us.
It sets into us, and now we start finding that it's coming from us. So we have Torah Sheba'al Peh. This is the bein Hashmashot. Okay? We have Torah Sheba'al Peh starts emerging from us. 24 Sifrei Tanakh. How many books do you think have been written after that in Torah Sheba'al Peh? Mishnah, Gemara, and then everything going back to the Rambam, and that's just the early ones, right? And since then, how many books do you think, how much has come from us? Hundreds, millions and millions and millions of Sfarim, because every single person has something unique to add to the story. Okay? Hashem's light has set. It got dark outside, but the light is in us, and it's coming out of us in a million different ways. Here's the thing. This is the setting of the sun outside, the rising of the inner sun, the fading away of prophecy, miracles and idolatry, the shift from Torah Sheba'al to Torah Sheba'al Peh. Now, what about the Greeks? The shift from superstition to science. That's what's happening now. Okay? What is happening? We're talking about the classic Greek period now, the Hellenic period, which is exactly at the same time of Churban Bayis Rishon and the early days of Bayis Sheni. What is going on? The difference between us and them is the following. We say, yes, the sun is setting. Hashem's clear and open, obvious Shekhinah that has pervaded our world is going into hiding. It's fading away. But it's still dusk, meaning, but there's still light, and it's from that sun. Okay? And what our job to do is, now our job is to remember that that sun, that Shekhinah, Hashem's interaction with us, everything we learn, that's still there. That's completely still there. But it's become harder to see. It's like, imagine you're watching a show, and you see in front of, the front of the stage where the actors are operating, but you also see behind the stage, as if there's no curtain, to backstage, and you see all the work that everybody's doing to set the stage up for the actors. You see all the background maneuverings. You see that too. Then the curtain drops, And you can't see the backstage anymore. You only see the front stage. But the backstage is still as all as it ever was. Everything's still going on back there. You just can't see it. Now, for us, when that curtain dropped, our job was to make sure that curtain wasn't so dark. It was like semi-transparent. We could still see through and see everything happening here is directly being choreographed by back there. So what is the first holiday, okay, after the Chorban Bayis Rishon that demonstrates that? Purim. Before we go into the long Gullus, Hashem says, I need to teach you something. Everything you think is happening is being choreographed. All right, now that you know that, you're ready to go out on your own and realize that that curtain, that's you only see the front of the stage. Just, you know, it's really, you meant to really like try to always see through it. Okay? Keep your eyes, you know, peeled on it. You will be able to see what's really going on behind there. And that's when we start going into the Long Exile. Now, before we go into Long Exile, we go back to Eretz Yisrael for a short time, and that's when Chanukah happens. All right? And the Chanukah story is to teach us that in this long exile, there's going to be we've changed our relationship with Hashem. We're no longer the daughter in the mother's house with the parents doing everything for us. Now we're going to be partners. We're going to fight. We're going to take losses. We're going to stand up for these values, and Hashem's going to help us side by side. And then after that's over, that's the Chanukah story. Rabban biad ma'atim, but we also fought. We took losses. People died. The miracle of the shemen was an open miracle. The last, but it happened in a hidden place. It was a throwback to the time of real open miracles, but it happened in a secret place, meaning I'm still here. I'm still here. Okay? Now, then, after that, we really fully go into the long gullus, where we're not so much anymore the partner, the sister. So remember we did this also? Sister/wife, other equal partner. Now we slowly evolve into the mother. Good. Now, but that's another share, which is called Who's the Mother of Hashem, which we take responsibility for Hashem's well-being, so to speak, in this world. Now, the Greeks. Both the Jewish people and the Greeks said, that way of thinking, that way of seeing the world, the way of operating, it's over. The Greeks said, goodbye and good riddance. All of that was nonsense. That was all superstition. There are no gods controlling things. We have to learn science. We have to know how this world actually operates. Aristotle spent most of his time cataloging all the various fish in the ocean, all the animals, all the mammals, everything. He cataloged most of what Aristotle did. He also wrote a lot about other things, obviously ethics and rhetoric and war. But he was a scientist who cataloged the natural world. What is the natural world? What does it contain? And how do the things of this world operate? In fact, when that curtain went down and all you could see was the world in front of you, right, that was a relief. That was a liberation. They were happy to turn their back on the prior world of all the superstitious stories of what was explaining in a nonsensical way what was really going on here. Because it was all fantasy anyway. It was all invented. When they shut their door on the previous, earlier way of looking at things, as if there was an interaction between the gods and this world, which there wasn't, they expected us to also turn our back on the previous world and our way of thinking that it was God who was interacting in all our lives and guiding us. They said, it's nonsense. That would never happen. That was all your imagination. Now, for them, that's true. It was just their imagination. But for us, it was not true. We really had, that world continues. It is meant to continue into the future. So they felt that we would not progress. They were trying to progress away from superstition. And they viewed our era of Torah Shebechsav, of Giloi Shechina, as equal to their era of superstition. And they wanted us to progress. We also wanted to progress. We were ready to launch into the era of Torah Shebechsav, Torah Shebal Peh, where everything comes from us, just like them. They will discover the world. They will understand things. They will explain what's going on. That's the same for us. It's the whole emphasis has shifted. Who's defining reality, God or people? And we are also ready to shift. It's happening. It's the 8 days of the diminishing of the light. Now it's the 8 days of the increasing of the light that comes from us. We're ready to embrace the period of human discovery, just like them. The only difference is we're not discrediting and devaluing the world before human exploration and human discovery. We're letting it inform our discovery. Does this make sense? Does this make sense? That's the machlokas. They got very frustrated that we would behave and do things like a bris milah that didn't make sense if you're only taking the physical, natural world into account.
But did they not also have the same thing that Hitler had, that we were the conscious of the world? They were very happy not only to throw off the superstition, but they were also happy to throw off rules of morality, rules of behavior between.
Well, it depends. It really depends what you're talking about. You know, as it became more Roman, it became more vulgar and more, what's the word? More
It was hedonistic.
hedonistic. And when the Greeks were definitely not. The Greeks were very high-minded, very high-minded. It was shifting. But the thing is also, there, when you only see, okay, the world in front of you, and you don't see behind the stage, all you can do is react to what you see. And your conclusions and your decisions and your choices are going to be based on what you see in front of you. If you don't take into account that there's something behind the scenes, you're going to be doomed, and this is all the Greek tragedies, okay, to be stuck, it's fatalistic also, in the conditions of this world. There's no one to pray to, no one to break into history and help you, nobody who's working for you behind the scenes, nothing. There's nothing there but you and your own, maneuverings to try to secure your existence as best as possible. Now, the idea here is the influence, the way of seeing the world shifted from the East, okay, to the West. The East is still today, and now that we're after 2,000 years of Western way of thinking, right? People are running back to the East. So what happened here? What's the East versus the West? The East was from a time and preserved. Okay, that's from, remember Avraham, we talked about this idea that really beyond the physical world there is a spiritual oneness and a wholeness, and they view the physical world as an interference, a klipa, a trap. You need to devalue it. You need to leave it behind. You need to divest yourself of it and break through to the other side and meditate and be spiritual and give up all the things of the physical world, because this world is just is getting in the way of your true identity, which is spiritual. The West, okay, when the curtain closed on Avodah Zarah and on seeing God in this world, it closed, and it was the Western world, Greece and then Rome and then Western culture, that picked up on the new way, okay, and even Torah, even, okay, well, I won't drop that for a second. Okay, so it was the West, okay, and the West said that was all nonsense, and we only have the world we can discover. After 2,000 years of relating to a world that had nothing beyond it, so that how do you approach that world? You don't break through to the other side. You just let yourself be submergent. Eat, drink, and be merry. Epicureanism, that's Roman. Eat, drink, and they weren't exactly eat, drink, and be merry like we think hedonistically. They were more high-minded than that. They felt that they weren't necessarily hedonists. They believed in limited moderation. However, don't do anything that you're going to die anyway. So do what gives you pleasure, even if those things that give you pleasure might be thinking, sacrifice for the family, whatever it is that gives you pleasure. There was another movement called Stoicism, which both are alive and well today. Which, how someone is stoic, don't invest in anything that will cause you pain if you lose it. Okay? Because what's the point? There's nothing beyond this world. After 2,000 years in eat, drink, and be merry, or just this life is, just get through it without too much pain type of thing, people are running back to the East. But there's a balance in the middle, okay, which is us. And the balance is this. This physical world is meant to reveal the spiritual forces that are governing it, that are guiding it. This spiritual world, this physical world, everything in this world, and more as you go through history, it's happening. history, human nature, science, everything. Everything is just another opportunity to reveal that this world is actually in sync with the next world and an expression of, and not just, I'm sorry, the spiritual world and an expression of it. We talked about this last week when we explained what a bracha is. The last idea I'm going to leave you with, because we're late, remember that famous piece that we've mentioned before from the Gemara in Yuma? Why is Esther called Ayelet HaShachar? Okay? Because just like no, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. This is the wrong one. This is the wrong part of the Gemara. But so the Gemara says, why is Esther compared to the dawn? Just like the dawn is the end of the night, so the miracle of Purim, Esther, is the end of the Nisim. Remember that strange Gemara? Just like you think, just thank God, the dawn, it's the end of the night. The dawn is a good thing, the night's a bad thing. So finally, Esther, Purim, it's the end of the Nisim. So the Nisim are associated with the nighttime. And the Esther and Hester Punim, when God goes into hiding, is associated with the dawn. What's going on here? Now we know. Why are the time period of open miracles called the night? And the time period of hidden miracles called the daytime? We did this. What's the reason?
It's our opportunity to bring forth the spiritual.
Exactly. When Hashem is doing all the miracles and the light is coming from outside of us, okay, that's darkness inside of us. We don't need to bring out the light from in us because it's all so bright outside. Open miracles, Beis Hamikdash, the whole thing. The Gemara says, Shraga batira mai mahani, a torch in the daylight is useless. You don't need to have a torch inside yourself. It's bright daylight outside. Only when the Hashem stops with the miracles. The Ar Haganos goes into real hiding. The Shekhinah starts to be behind the scenes. Okay, Hashem's presence here in this world is behind the scenes. Then the dawn begins. That's inside of us. Purim is considered the last of the miracles. Okay, Purim is of the transition. So the Gemara asks, "What are you talking about? There's miracles after Purim. There's Chanukah." It says no. Purim is the last miracle that was written in a Megillah, part of Tanakh. And there was a big machlokas if they should write Purim and make it part of Tanakh. Big machlokas. Esther had a fight that it should be included in Tanakh. It was a big dispute. She won the dispute because the reason is, and her argument was, Purim is a hidden miracle, but it is that hidden miracle, okay, is the culmination. It's the purpose. It's exactly, it defines what all the open miracles were all for. They were there to teach us. It's chinuch. Now we're going into Galus. This is what we're going to remember, that behind, even though the curtain drops, so to speak, it's still exactly the same. Nothing's changed. And the truth is, Purim is a glimpse at the light at the end of the historic tunnel. Purim, the Achros Yamim is going to be like Purim. It's going to be just like Purim. So before we go into the Golus, we get this assurance. Now, this is the Gemara says, Chanukah happens. It says, Chanukah was not ever written. The story of Chanukah does not exist as part of Tanakh. Why not? Why not? Because Chanukah is the era of Torah, Shabbal, Peh. It's when everything comes from us. It is not part of Tanakh. It's already in the long Golus. It's the gateway to the long Golus in which it's all going to come from us. And I'll end with this idea. If you were in Eretz Yisrael and you were lighting in your doorway, you would have a very dramatic visual. You would have your mezuzah, which comes from Mitzrayim, which is the beginning of the era of the open miracles, right? On your right. And your mezuzah, which is the beginning of the era of the hidden miracles, which means the menorah, what I say? The menorah on your left. So these are the two gateways. The gateway there was one gateway towards the first kufa, and you're in the mezuzah, you're in the gateway. There's a gateway to the second kufa. And ideally, the summation of all of it is that as we go through history, and we learn through history, that there is no disconnect between Hashem, between what's going on behind the scenes, Hashem's ultimate plan and what we're seeing playing out in our real life, it's still very much, in sync with each other, and it's going forward, it's moving forward, it's progressing. We always knew this. We always trusted this. We never let go of this idea. That's why we lived according to things that made no sense. We always trusted that Hashem has not abandoned us, and we know that we don't understand the things that happen even if they're difficult for the Jewish people. We know that we're not on our own here. We never lost sight of what's behind the scenes. And eventually that curtain will rise, so to speak, and everybody will see that everything that happens in front of the curtain and everything that was going on behind the curtain were always one. And there was complete, there was a complete connection, and therefore everything will fall into place and make sense. B'mheira b'yameinu. Yes, Chaim.
It seems that the periods when